Stand by. We're going live. We're going live. 10, 9, going live. 7, 6, 5, going live. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, welcome to 10 Seconds to Air. I'm Alita Guillen. Today my guest is Shelly Peiken. She's a 2-time Grammy-nominated songwriter. She is the woman behind some of the words we sing. You know her music because she has written songs with or for Christina Aguilera, Meredith Brooks, Brandy, Britney Spears, The Pretenders, Keith Urban, Celine Dion, Reba McEntire, Miley Cyrus, Ed Sheeran, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato. The list goes on and on. She is also the author of the Grammy-nominated audiobook, Confessions of a Serial Songwriter. She calls it a love letter. I've read it. I call it a tell-all book about her journey in the music industry. She is also a singer, recently releasing her debut album, performing a collection of hits she wrote for other artists and some of her own favorites that were never released. Today, I'm talking to Shelly about what it's like to perform, what it takes to make a hit, and the business that went from vinyl to streaming. Not only is Shelly a great songwriter, but she is a terrific guest. Here is Shelly Peiken. Thank you so much for being here with me.
It is my pleasure, and it's right around the corner.
It couldn't be any easier.
That's right.
And in person.
That's right.
I love in person.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been able to do that very often. 10 Seconds to Air is the name of this podcast.
Yes.
10 seconds to you performing. I want to know what goes through your mind 10 seconds before you start performing.
I've got this. I'm meant to be here. They love me. An hour before, it's a completely different thought.
What's happening an hour before?
An hour before
I can't do
is,
this.
I don't have this. What am I doing? They're going to hate me. But, you got to give yourself the good stuff if you're going to have a good performance. And if you make mistakes, which I'm going to, you just make them work for you. They make you human.
Yeah, I agree.
I never sit down and say, I'm a consummate performer.
But there's a lot that goes into that. It doesn't, nothing is perfect, right? Is there?
Well, with some people it is.
You think so?
Sure.
Who?
Keith Urban.
Perfect?
Probably.
Wow.
Ariana Grande when she sings. Yeah. But I'm a singer-songwriter. With a singer-songwriter, it's usually a little bit more rough around the edges.
How has COVID affected you as a singer-songwriter?
It's definitely given me a chance to reassess how I want to move forward with my life. And maybe it came at a point where I should have been doing that anyway, but I was so busy that I didn't get a chance to slow down and really think about it. Mm-hmm. And then I was forced to think about it. And the way I chose to move forward is actually something that I'm happy about, and that I don't want to thank COVID.
Yeah.
But I appreciate having had the time to reassess and figure it out.
So what came out of it for you? Sounds like you have a plan.
So not necessarily, but the plan doesn't mean that you have to have a plan. In fact, I had too many plans. And then if the plan doesn't work out, you're like, oh, well, that plan didn't work out. I think my plan is to have not so much of a plan and to be open and maybe to slow down a little bit more, to not feel like I have to wake up every day and have something on my iCal. In fact, if it says you have no events today, part of me goes, yay.
Right.
I can cook, or, I can schmutz around in the garden, and I have time to listen to music. And if I have 2 days in a row of that stuff, then I want something on my calendar. But I'm picking and choosing what I want to do. My circle of friends has shrunken, and not because we've almost had to shrink our social life, but the people who I want to be with, who I enjoy being with. And that's not to say that I've pushed out others that I don't like. It's just that time is limited.
Yeah.
Life is limited. And I feel like I don't need to have, I think, you know, we have so many people on our digital, in our contacts, and so many people we send out Christmas cards to. It's like you don't have to have dinner and have lunch with all of these people.
Right.
I feel that if you don't make time for them, if you're simply texting them, are they truly in your world? I mean, pick up the phone and have a conversation. Hear somebody's voice. I mean, just being in the room with you is so. There's just something about being in the room. You know, I know we'd probably get to this. My work as a songwriter has made it necessary to be creative virtually.
Yeah.
And halfway through the year, I just decided I don't want to do this. It's not the same as the energy you feel in the room with somebody, especially if you're being creative with them.
So were you not writing any songs? Or you decided to take a hiatus with that?
I was, and then I stopped a lot of it because I just don't want to do it over a screen. I don't want to do it through a screen. I want to be able to go out for a coffee and take a walk with somebody and talk about what we're going to work on, because usually the idea for the song comes from that walk, comes from the organic nature of just jumping around. To just go into a room and write a song with somebody is almost like making art without any kind of foreplay. So I don't like to see, your Zoom meeting is starting now and you jump right in. Even talking through a screen, it's just not the same. And I thank God we've had that through COVID.
Yeah.
Because if this had happened 25 years ago, we would have really been cut off from everything. But making art, I feel, collaborating
is in person.
Especially writing a song, because when you're writing a song with somebody, they're next to you and you're singing harmony. If you're on Zoom, you can't even sing together.
So what
There's
happens?
a latency. If you're writing a script, it might be a little different.
So what happens now when you're on Zoom with somebody? Do you postpone? Do you just say, let's table this and we'll meet?
People that are serious about writing a song over Zoom can do it. All the students I teach do it.
Yeah.
But they will, talk through a song. Maybe one of the kids or one of the writers will come up with a chord progression while the other is, writing. It's just very hard to do things together. And then if somebody is writing the music and the other person is the singer, they could digitally send them the file, and then the other person receives the file and records music in the privacy of their studio, and then they send it back to be mixed. So it's been hard to just get in the room.
Yeah. This industry has had so much change. So you describing what's going on right now just with Zoom, it to me sounds like, wow, just another change that you have to adjust to. Go all the way back to what it was like when you wrote your first song or when you started out. What was that like?
That was fantastic because there was hardly any technology. There was, the computer is now sort of a part of the whole process. But before we all had laptops, we had guitars.
So what was a session like? How would you write? You get together you get a call. Walk me through that.
Well, I started out in these little groups in New York City, and we'd all try to write with each other. It was like having sex with all different people, and just to see how it felt and who you did well with. And you could love somebody and not write a good song with them. But you'd get in a room, they'd come over, you'd have a coffee, you'd take a walk, especially in New York. It was the best place to take a walk. And then you'd sit next to each other. Somebody would have a guitar. They'd start playing something. You'd think about what was on your mind that week. How am I feeling? What did I want to write about? That would be my therapy. What would be catharsis? I'm falling in love. That guy just broke up with me. Can you relate? They could usually relate. Somebody came up with a first line and it would just snowball.
How many people does it take to write a song?
One.
And
that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. But is that really what happens?
I enjoy one-on-one. I enjoy writing by myself, but I am limited to where I go musically. I usually go to the same place. If I'm writing with another delicious musician, they can pull me into different territory, which brings other words and brings other feelings. 3 is always a fun experience too. It definitely changes the dynamics. And 4 is too much for me. But in the modern day songwriting room, there could be 5, there could be 6. I look on the Justin Bieber record and I check the credits and there's 10 people on a song.
Well, how does that work?
Well, and I don't want to be, I don't want to judge that. I don't want to be in that room because it's not intimate. It's more like a fun party experience where everybody is, throwing out snippets and ingredients and wordplay out in a group of people while probably a track is going round and round and it feels great and there's a beat and there's a great rhythm. And that's definitely a playful, delicious, fun way to write a song. And I've participated in songwriting like that. It's sort of like a different sport.
Yeah.
Than when you're sitting down and writing one-on-one with somebody about something you want to go deeper with. It's more of a slow-cooked song when you're one-on-one or 3 in a room.
But that was not happening in the beginning. You didn't have 10 people together writing a song. What?
No.
How did that change?
Well,
Why did that change?
I think that changed when technology came into the picture. Well, let me back up a little bit. When I was living in New York and started writing professionally, there were maybe 20 lyricists that were getting calls to come in to write the songs with artists that would, with other writers that, for songs that would be pitched to other artists through publishers. And one of those people was me. When technology came onto the scene as part of the songwriting process, and apps became available to help you rhyme and help you find words and help give you phrases, that made it possible to be a songwriter without actually being a musician, because you could program a sample of a chord change and just loop it. You could press a button and loop it without having to pick up a guitar and say, let me change the voicing, let me see how this goes. And you could call up word phrases, and that allowed thousands of more people to enter the songwriting space.
Yeah.
And so there were so many more people to accommodate that wanted to get in on the song or in on the record, that more people came in the room. But let me be fair here. I think a lot of these new songwriters enjoy being in the room with a whole bunch of people.
Well, that's all they know. If that's how they started
Yeah,
out, that's
but
not.
it's a legitimate process. They all, I might not be thinking of something, but you say something that makes me say something, and then that starts the ball rolling, and then she thinks of something, and everybody's working off of each other. Like some people enjoy orgies. Some people enjoy 3-ways. Some people enjoy, you know what I mean? I'm not judging it. I'm just saying that this is more of the sport.
Yeah, it changed.
Now.
The sport changed a little bit.
Right.
I noticed that you relate it all in a sexual way.
I do.
And why is that? What's
Because it's like, I call it song sex. When you're writing a song, especially for me with one person, it is a very intimate, exciting experience. And I feel like that other person can arouse me. Maybe not in my sexual organs, but it's an arousing experience in my synapses, and it takes me to a place, and it's out of body, and I love it. And it just feels like you're having sex with songwriting. And everything that comes before it, all the conversation, is really like foreplay. And I feel like when you hit it, when you're on the money, when you get it, it's like an eargasm. And I know those things seem humorous, and they are, but I'm serious. it's an analogy that I.
So can you have great sex, song sex,
Yes,
have a great orgasm, and it not be a hit?
absolutely.
What takes it to be a hit?
All the stars colliding, the right song at the right time with the right artist when the world is ready for it. Like I look at the song "Bitch"
Yeah.
that I wrote.
Love that song, by the
Thank
way.
you.
Can you just, can you
I'm
do?
a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother.
Love it.
I wrote it with Meredith Brooks, and I forgot what the question was. You said,
Oh,
can
no.
you have,
Yeah.
I think, when you think about that word, in 1997, it was kind of shocking.
Yeah, a little edgy.
And it's not that there wasn't ever a song out there with the word bitch in it. Elton John did it, the Stones did it. But there was never a song where a woman referred to herself as a bitch, and it was actually a compliment.
And it was empowering. That song is
And
so
it was
empowering.
But that word was shocking in 1997. Now,
Yeah.
it's like, almost in every hip hop song.
So when you say you wrote it with her, were you in the
Yes.
room with her?
Yes, just like this, one-on-one, no loop going around, no beat playing, no technology. She had a guitar on her lap, and it was just beautiful. Just one-on-one, line, 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 line.
And how long does something like that take?
Took us about an hour.
Get out of here.
We didn't have...
You gotta leave now.
No,
You
we
gotta
didn't
go.
have the last line of the chorus, which was, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother. And I was saying, you would never listen. I'm your hell, I'm your dream, I'm nothing in between. How do we end it? We didn't have that last line. And we're like, oh my God, the last line. And Meredith left, and she got the last line driving home in her car.
What's the last
And
line?
she called me when she got home, and it was, and you wouldn't want it any other way.
Okay, so put that together.
I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, and I'm all these things. And I know that I give you a hard time, but you wouldn't want it any other way. And then the last
so
chorus
good.
is, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And at first I was like, really? It doesn't rhyme with anything. Really? That's what you think it should be? But when I look back on it, it was perfect. It was
So-
saying, I
yeah.
am all these things, and that's exactly as it should be. And you love me that way, and you'd be bored any other way, and so would I. So an hour minus that line, which we needed a few more hours for her to get home and get. And then she recorded it that night with a friend of hers, Geza X, a producer who lived in the Canyon. And she was signed within the week for that. But the question was, do you ever write a song that you believe is a hit that doesn't become a hit? I mean, and then again, what is a hit? Is a hit
Yeah, did you
a
know
proven charting song, or is it a song that you believe could be and never was?
Yeah. Like, did you know, what was your feeling about that? Oh, that's the dog. He doesn't like that.
She doesn't like my song.
Hey,
come
go
here.
sit down. Sit next
Come
to
on.
Shelly.
Come on.
So how did, for that song in particular, so she goes home, she records it, and are you sitting at home saying, we got it,
We
this
were
one is...
fired up that day.
You were.
We thought, regardless of whether it gets on the radio or not, we had tingles. We felt like we wrote something that was really true to us, that was really resonating in our bones. You can't expect a song to resonate with anybody else if it doesn't start resonating with you first. It might, but
Yeah.
you can't expect it to unless you feel it.
Yeah, and you felt that.
Yes, we were both really excited about. And then there were hoops to go through because they didn't want to play that word on the radio.
So
And
that
we
was...
thought, wait, you played it for Elton John,
Yeah.
you played it with the Stones. Why won't you play it for us?
Women. Mm-hmm. Was that a part of it? Because you were women? It was about
I
a
think
woman? It was
so.
yeah.
They were like, well, we're not ready for it. Yeah, but what do you mean not ready for it? The Stones did it, and Elton John. You're not ready for a woman.
So how long did
say
it take to get that going?
So we were trying to figure out a way to shmush it out. I'm a shmush. But
Thank
then-
God, no.
what is the song without
Right.
the word? The word, the
Yeah.
song's all about the word. Somebody at K-Rock said, I'm playing the song. And they played it, and that was that. And then everybody luckily picked up on it because, you can't even do a post on Facebook now with the word, you can say it in your pretext to your image. But if you want to promote it, if you're promoting something like, if we had that song out now and wanted to promote it, which you got to do, they would not let you.
Why?
Because bitch is profane.
Oh, so the algorithm would pick it up and
That's
then...
right. And it would shut you down.
Oh.
As if Facebook doesn't have better things to shut down.
But there's a lot of music out there with a lot of vulgarity that's not shut down.
But they cannot. And if you have momentum, like if you were a big star, it doesn't matter. But we were nothing. Meredith didn't ever have... It didn't matter because there was no... This was right before... Facebook wasn't out there yet.
So this is... Meredith has not had a hit yet? She hasn't...
No, she had not. This was her first.
And how about you? Had you had a hit?
I had songs on the radio overseas, but nothing in my hometown. Nothing where I could drive away from my house and turn on the radio and hear it.
Do you remember the first time that happened?
I remember the first time.
What was that?
When we wrote Bitch, I was about 5 months pregnant. So when it came out, my belly was out to here. I had this little Miata. I was squished in my little Miata. I was driving away from my house in Laurel Canyon. And it came on the radio. And I needed to tell the world. And we had those Motorola flip phones. They were the size of a boot.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was a flip phone.
And it was a flip phone. And half the calls you made got dropped.
Right. I remember that.
And I tried calling my mother and it got dropped. And I tried calling Meredith and it got dropped. And I go, Adam, and I just kept trying to call everybody and the calls kept getting dropped. And by the time I was done trying to call everybody, the song was over. And I thought, never do that again.
Never do what again?
Never, just don't call anybody. Pull over and just listen to your song being played. You waited too long for this moment to miss it by trying to tell everybody it was happening.
They were probably listening to it and you didn't even know.
I don't know.
Is that the moment that you would say you knew you made it?
I don't know if I thought that. Because what is it to make it? Is it one song? Is it to have longevity? Then you need another song to prove that first song wasn't a fluke, which thankfully I had a few years later with Christina Aguilera. And What a Girl Wants was the first #1 song of the millennium. So then I felt like, okay, the universe is telling me it wasn't a fluke. I sort of know what I'm doing.
But this is how many years in? You're like 10 years into your...
Well, Bitch was 10 years into me having songs recorded. It took 10 years of having songs recorded to really have a huge hit. And then 2 or 3 years later to have another one. And I had a few semis in between. But I don't know if I was... What I was thinking of that at that moment that I heard Bitch, it was more like... Thank God. Thank you, Lord, because was I imagining? There were points where I was imagining, like, do I think I've got it and I really don't? Or do I have it, but I'll never get to prove it because I'll never get to show anybody that, there are people in this business who write better songs than I do, who've been at it for longer than I have, that never had a hit. So how do they walk around and have everybody know that? I mean, I might know it, but it's like the song on the radio. It's like your souvenir. It's like your proof.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you're not writing songs because you don't want people to listen to them. You want to share that.
Yeah. And we're all poo-pooing the Grammys. And we know that, part of the Grammys, it's a TV show. And there's plenty of people that aren't getting nominated that should be. But if you do get nominated, and I have been nominated twice, I will take it. It's sort of like, it's proof that I am in the zeitgeist and that I'm relevant. It doesn't mean that I'm better. It's just, it's something. And I'm never going to say no, and I'm never going to push it away or pretend it doesn't matter.
Of course it matters, right? So the songwriting world changes quite a bit. Even consuming songs changes quite a bit, right? Napster comes around, and then you've got, what was that time like because how were you paid when you were a songwriter back in that day versus how you are now?
So Napster just changed everything. It was a game changer, and nobody thought it was going to last, and it did. The way I was paid before digital was when people bought a physical album or CD or cassette or however back you want to go, regardless of whether you had a hit on that album or wrote an album cut, quote unquote, which got sandwiched in between the songs you heard on the radio. Every song would get paid 9 cents. That got split between the writers and the publishers. So say you wrote a whole song and you published the whole song, which was unusual because usually you co-wrote it and then you co-published it. But let's say you wrote a whole song. Mm-hmm. You get 9 cents for your song. And if that album sold 1 million copies, which was not unusual, do the math. $90,000 for a song that was never on the radio, was never a hit. Mm-hmm. And if you had 2 of those a year in the 90s,
it's good money.
You could have a vacation, go out to dinner twice a week, pay a mortgage. Yeah. It was decent.
Yeah, you were living.
2 songs on albums that weren't hits.
But how hard was that to do? Because right now somebody could say, oh, I want to write 2 songs and be, but does that really happen?
That you won't get paid on that anymore because because the physical copy and that 9 cents went away when songs started being delivered via the invisible stream.
So how does it work now? How do you get paid off from songs?
A song needs to be streamed 1 million times to pay out $5,000 to everybody involved, and $4,800 of that will go to the master owner, which is the label, and $200 gets split between everybody. Now, that's, if you're an album cut, that's what you're going to get. The only way to earn an exceptional living is to have the huge hits, which get streamed millions and millions and millions and millions of times.
So what's a big hit now? How many streams does a big hit get?
And then there's YouTube, and then it gets licensed. But a big hit, could be, millions. So that number, that 5,000, gets multiplied by 1,000, and you're doing okay.
Yeah. Okay, or doing really well?
You're doing well.
Okay.
If you have, and then, if you're in the 3% or the 5% of writers that are having those hits, and you get called into those rooms and those hits multiply, not just how many times that hit stream, but you're writing more and more of them, you're doing well. But that's only maybe 5% of the songwriting community. So the middle class cannot sustain themselves at all without having a second job, which means they're going to be working less at their craft. And, the streaming services are making plenty of money. And the labels and the master owners are making plenty of money. So if you're a songwriter and you don't want to get signed to a label and you say, I'm going to own my own masters so I can earn the $4,800 of that $5,000, then you can own a bigger piece of the pie. But without the machine that is the label to get that song distributed all over every station and satellite. So I feel very fortunate that I came up and had my big hits before the digital delivery system.
Do you think you would have gone into this career if you were coming in now?
I think I would have had no choice because I never had a choice. This is what I wanted to do. But I think what I'm doing now is I do a lot of advocacy with an organization called SONA, Songwriters of North America, and we are on it. In the before COVID, we'd go to DC, we'd lobby.
And when you say on it, what do you mean? What are you doing?
We are fighting the good fight to get a more even distribution of royalties, so that songwriters should get paid more. But it's a David and Goliath situation but you still have to fight the good fight. I don't feel like I'm doing it so much for myself anymore, but for the young songwriters coming up. Would I have done it? I would have found a way. But what young songwriters have to do now is not just write. They have to, if they're going to not get signed to a label, if they want to own their own master, they have to upload their own material to the streaming services. They've got to do their own graphics. They've got to do their own social media. They've got to do their own marketing. They've got to be on social media constantly, promoting themselves, stories, little videos. I mean,
more skills, different. It's very different.
It's not just like you can be, I mean, a lot of people look at this as doing it yourself is a proactive benefit. You could do everything. You have control. But for me, I would rather just make my art and be surrounded with people who know how to put me out there.
Yeah, well, that you
who
had
have that expertise,
and you had that choice. You were lucky because you were at a time where that was you were able to do that.
Right.
People
well,
now
I wasn't an artist. I was a songwriter, but artists put themselves in hands with labels and people who knew how to do this stuff, who knew how to market you and make you artwork. You know, they have to do so much now, and a lot of young people don't mind. They love it. They love, and they come up in an industry where they're multitasking, they're doing this all at once. No, it's mind-boggling for me because I never had to do that.
None of us did.
So God bless them that they know how to, but they better know how to.
Yeah. So you say you're not an artist, you're a songwriter, but you are an artist.
Well, I am an artist. I'm an artist in that I do believe songwriters are artists, but I mean, what I meant was when I was coming up, I wasn't a recording artist signed to a label.
You're a recording artist now.
Well, I made one album. I don't want to say I was a recording artist that year. I'm an artist. I'm a songwriter who made her own record because I felt like it was time in my career to put my voice on the songs of mine that were hits that other people made famous, and I bow to them for doing that. I wanted to see how it would feel to record my own songs and what I would do with them or how I would deliver them.
So in 2020, you come out with your own album.
Right.
And how many songs do you record?
It's called 2.0, etc., as in the second chapter of life. And the etc. was not just the hits. Half of the album was hits and half were songs that I felt were hits that never got out there.
And how's that process?
And that was wonderful. I did most of it with my friend Eve Nelson, who's a wonderful producer. A little bit with my friend Phil Thornalley in UK, and one song with Wally Gagel, but most with Eve. And she and I love to record and experiment with textures, and then we roast a chicken, and then we have a little wine, or, you know, it was wonderful.
It was like the good old days.
It was great.
It was like,
I go over there in my pajamas, and, you know, we just have a grand old time. And it was a wonderful experience. I have to say it would have been nice if I wasn't doing it right when we locked down, because I couldn't really promote it the way I wanted to. I couldn't go out to my community and play the songs and ask people to come see me. A lot of it was virtual. But, you know, now we're going full circle with COVID. I could be here and say, it was a drag. I put out my album and then I couldn't promote it. But, you know, everybody got gypped.
Yeah.
Everybody lost something that they wanted to do. So.
And you know what, Shelly? I mean, people, if you put that out now, as far as doing something in person, people will run to that, though. Well, maybe not this moment, but it's coming.
Right. If I did it like in 6 months, they would be dying.
It's coming.
You know, I could still play out. I just feel like I don't have as much. I think COVID sort of took a little notch away from my ambition.
Mm.
You know, I don't.
Or put it someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah. Once I pick my guitar up and play in front of a group of people, I get it back like this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is so great. I can feel my energy going into them and they're giving it back to me. And that makes me want to practice more and play more. So who knows?
Yeah.
But I think I do it with a different set of expectations. I don't feel like maybe somebody's going to sync this in a TV show, although that would be nice, and I'm looking into that. But I don't feel like, this is going to go onto a playlist on Spotify and it's going to start getting spins on NPR. I would simply do it for the joy of playing for a group of people who are hungry to hear live music during a pandemic. My husband and I, Adam Gorgoni, who helped you put your sisters together,
responsible for the music at the beginning of this podcast, if I haven't told everybody. Fabulous.
He and I just needed to play, and the people in our neighborhood needed to hear music, so we put together a duo called the Clams. And the reason it was called the Clams, I wouldn't do it unless we could call it the Clams, was because I am not a proficient musician and I make mistakes all over the place. And a clam is a word that we use as musicians for when somebody makes a colossal mistake and all the music sort of collides because somebody's in a different key than the rest of the band. Oh my God, it was a clam. I said, if we could call ourselves the Clams, I'll do this because then it's a caveat.
Right.
I'm making an excuse for myself for the mistakes I am going to make.
Already. We're gonna let everyone know that's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we set up in my driveway, which is a long driveway in Laurel Canyon. And people came from the neighborhood and put out a little picnic table across the street. They brought beach chairs and bottles of wine. And maybe there were 50 people, but we played.
For the neighborhood.
They loved it, and we loved it, and it was so much fun. We played songs that were reminiscent of songs that came out of Laurel Canyon and songs about the revolution. It was right before the 2020... Was it? No, it was, right
before the election. Mm.
And, we were playing, there were 2 documentaries that were out about Laurel Canyon. So we played lots of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Carole King. And it was so much fun. And we'll probably do it again. It was just the neighborhood. That was enough, in other words. Yeah. We didn't need to get on the radio. It was...
Do you remember when you were coming up who you were listening to?
Yeah.
Who?
Oh, Carole King, Carly Simon, Billy Joel, Hall & Oates, Todd Rundgren.
And who do you listen to now?
Carly Simon, Billy Joel, Hall & Oates, Todd Rundgren. Actually, I'm a 70s fanatic, but I listen avidly to new music. I'm an adjunct professor for a class at Murfreesboro in Tennessee. And it's really important for me to listen to new music. I like to share with them why old music became classics, because some things never changed, but a lot of things have. And for me not to be up on what Billie Eilish is doing or Dua Lipa is doing or, what Phoenix is doing and Wilco, and, well, they're not as current, but, just more current bands, the new soundtrack to Sex and the City, and that's what they want to write. And I have to honor that. And I also enjoy a lot of the new music.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you like what you hear nowadays? You do?
I do. There is a different sensibility for me. New music is something I might love for the moment. But what we listen to growing up is always going to have a more indelible place in our spirit. It's going to take us back to that place. And the music we were hearing, the music I was hearing growing up, had a longer lifespan. There wasn't as much quote unquote, I hate this word, content, where things today are here today, gone tomorrow. It's very unusual for something to stay on the charts for 25 weeks. But there wasn't as much to play back then. So what got played over and over. So a song that you heard over and over again for the whole relationship with your first boyfriend is going to have an indelible connection with that time in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Why is that? What is it about?
Because of how long it stayed in your culture, in your spiritual place. You know, it was just here for the year. It didn't come and go and move on to a new song.
So you feel like there's more of an emotional connection with the older music because
it had so much more longevity.
Yeah. Is there a certain amount of plays that someone has to hear a song for it to be stuck to them, you know, or for a hit to really hit?
Probably. I don't know that number.
Yeah.
But I think young people move on even now if they're like a super fan. They might be a super fan with somebody this year and somebody else next year, and they're die hard, but they move on. And think of how long legendary artists lasted. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, Elton John. Do you think if Bob Dylan were on The Voice, would he have moved past the golden ticket on
Right.
American Idol?
Right.
He would have been gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are, can you imagine our world without
So do you
artists
think
like that?
Yeah,
I
so do
think
you
it's
think
become more about the singing and the melisma and the delivery than the depth of your catalog and your journey.
you think the Beatles would have survived?
The Beatles are a whole different
Right.
podcast. I cannot even include this.
Wanted to see what you were going to say to
Because
that.
they are exceptions to every conversation. I never hear a Beatles song that sounds dated.
Yeah, it's incredible. Why is that? What did they do? What was their secret
They
sauce?
were, I think that they were so authentic. I think back then they weren't thinking about what are the young people. They were just doing what was coming out of their guts.
Lots of sex
Like,
and orgasms
you know,
and that writing.
Like John, I dig a roadhog. What the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, the line before that was, I dig a skylight, which is, I don't know what that means either, but it's a more polite term. They didn't care.
Yeah. So as a songwriter, when you look at their lyrics, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I got back in touch with my lyric writing after seeing the documentary Get Back, because I used to do something a lot more often and a lot more naturally with a lot less self-consciousness than I do now. And I'm getting back to it. And that was the dummy lyric, the placeholder. Something in the way she moves attracts me like no cauliflower, was what George was singing, was what John suggested he sing. Until he came up with a better word for cauliflower. But the aestheticness of that word felt good. And John and George came up with no other lover, no cauliflower. You see the relationship.
Yeah.
But the cauliflower had to be said before the no other lover was arrived at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel that when I saw that, I thought, I used to do that. I used to not have to make myself or expect myself to come up with the word the day I was writing the song. It was more about what is the aesthetic that feels right.
So you changed with that urgency, that time, kind of people now doing.
I'm getting back to that now.
Yeah, you're going back to what you used to do.
I'm getting back to that, excuse me, I don't give a fuck what this means.
Yeah.
This feels right. And tomorrow the aesthetic is going to make sense. And I'm going to be going to the supermarket. And on the way to the supermarket, the word's going to come
Yeah.
out of the blue, because I'm not sitting there thinking about what is the literal word I'm thinking of with the exact rhyme. We have to breathe. We have to be more patient with ourselves, for art to evolve. And I think I know for the art I want to continue making. I think I for a while there was trying too hard to be like the kids and to be doing what they're doing with the clever wordplay, which I enjoy listening to and I respect and I'm wowed by. I don't know if I'm that kind of writer. I feel like I am the worn-in, soft, vintage, whiny kind of "Can't Make You Love Me" by any rate kind of lyric, like I did in Almost Doesn't Count, which Brandy recorded, and there are some young people who love urban music who love that song. And
give us a little piece of that song.
Almost Doesn't Count. Almost made you love me, almost made you cry, almost made you happy, baby. Didn't I? Almost had me thinking you were turned around, but everybody knows almost doesn't count. Almost heard you saying there was no big chorus.
Yeah.
It was like a tag at the end of verses. And the song was about a guy I fell in love with at college that almost loved me, never quite loved me. Had another girlfriend, always went back to her, never quite made him love me. And years after college, I wrote this with my friend Guy Roche. I always had that idea sitting around. But it was almost like that "Can't Make You Love Me," that Bonnie Raitt, she just knew this guy's never going to love me. And there was the cleverness was in using that common phrase, "almost doesn't count." But there wasn't all this wordplay. It was just this feeling. And I'm good at that kind of lyric.
You write a lot and talk a lot about feeling in the room, being one-on-one with people, feeling that emotion that you had with the old boyfriend that did just almost. Now, as you mature, do the things that come to mind to write about, are they different? Do they change with age? And are they still as
urgent?
Yeah. Urgent, vibrant, sexy.
No. So if I'm going through an old diary and I remember that crush, I'm almost better off writing about that. If I think about it and I remember that feeling and how much I wanted that love and I connect with that, I'm better off writing about that if I want to write a commercial song. People my age aren't, quote unquote, buying music. They're not listening to new music like I listen to new music.
Oh, that's
They're
interesting.
listening to catalog stuff. They're
Yeah.
listening to their 70s songs.
Yeah, I am.
When
I
I'm
go
in my
back.
car, it's like hits one and then I go to 70s. I'm like, oh my God.
I'm here. I'm home.
Lightning striking again. I can't turn off the 70s. But I will, I'll listen to KCRW in the morning. That's our NPR locally.
Yeah.
And they play new music. And if I hear something that resonates, I Shazam it. Then I download it. And then when I do my workout, I'm listening to new music because I have to and I want to and I enjoy it.
Yeah. And you're a professional. That's your business. I don't know that everybody else is doing that.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But my songs now, if I'm honest, they have a lot to do with time. And
what's something you've written recently
that time
about?
is scarce. And, one of my favorite songs on my album was not one of my hits. It was a song called Notebook. And it was a song about a notebook I've kept since the day my daughter was born. And I'm constantly writing in it. And the day that I am no longer, my daughter will have this book. And that's what she will have to remember me by. And I hope when she reads the pages, she'll hear my voice. So is that a love song about some guy that most young people want to hear songs about getting the guy or how hurt I am because he broke up with me because that's what they're going through.
Yeah.
And they want to listen to music that relates to their life. So are young people going to but that's where my mind goes. And this is a beautiful song,
Yeah.
you know.
And have you, has anyone recorded that?
No.
And
But I recorded it because half the album were songs that I just didn't think anybody would. I tried setting it down to, I thought it would be really great for Reba or, you know, a country artist. Not that the song was so country, but I think...
so how do you do that now? I mean, now you're established, so that's, if you want to get a song to someone...
It's harder.
It is? Why?
Yeah.
Why is it harder now?
Because artists want... It's not that they want songs from young happening writers. They won't say that, or they won't even realize that. My song doesn't... The gatekeepers for these artists are more receptive to writers who are happening.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And they might get my song and they'll be like, oh, there's Shelly Peiken, she's a has-been. And they might not even press play to a song that...
What does that do to you?
It's frustrating. But I knew if I dedicated my life to taking that one song and going, let's say, down to Nashville and playing it, I probably could get somebody to record it. Maybe that's what I should do. Just plan a trip for 2 weeks and go down there and play that song for everybody. And maybe I will, because it's been hard to do that the past couple of years when I have been pivoting and haven't been able to travel or do writing trips or, you know.
Have you ever done that before? Have you ever just gone and...
Made it my mission with one song?
Yeah.
No. And all of the times I've gone down to Nashville to try to write country music, not that I'm such a country music freak or write it so well, but it does well, and there's a lot of artists down there that are more willing to listen to songs they didn't write. And there are some people I love to write with down there, so I'll go and I'll write for that market. I've had 5 country cuts, none of which have come out of my efforts to go down there and write that song. It's just been a fluke thing. So in my situation, I feel like chasing it never does me good. I'm the kind of and it does good for some people need to do that. For me, I just need to show the universe I'm doing my thing, I'm doing what I love, and shit happens. It rewards me in ways that I couldn't have planned.
So when you were, I'm curious to go back to something that you said. You were talking about when Bitch first hit the airwaves, that they didn't want to play it, and you know, you didn't know, was it because of women, was it because of the word bitch, was it 2 women coming into... How has the industry changed for women?
I think it's changing. And I think a lot of the tokenism is going to evolve into the norm.
Because from the outside, it doesn't seem like it's a heavily male-dominated industry.
It doesn't?
It doesn't, because there's so many female artists.
Interesting.
But I don't know from... I think of Adele, I think of Taylor Swift, I think of Stevie Nicks, I think of Carly Simon, I think of all these incredible women.
Carly Simon and Stevie Nicks are all catalogs. They're not being played currently as far as new artists. Most new artists are men. And up until recently, probably 75% of artists that radio is playing
are
is
men.
all male.
Wow. See, I don't even realize that. And how about songwriters or musicians?
I want to go back a little bit and let you know that I've been asked this question before. When I was coming up in the business, I never once said, how am I going to make it as a woman? I never thought I am a woman songwriter, ever. I thought, I'm a songwriter. If I have the best song, I'm going to play it for everybody, and they're going to record it if it's great.
Were you the only woman in the room many times?
Well, there are usually 2 of us. And I'd say most of the people I wrote with, most of the songwriters I wrote with were men, because they might have had a more aggressive guitar style, or more women were lyric based. Men were too, but men were just grabbing the guitar a lot more often. And if I had to be really honest, the sexual tension between myself and a man was always better for the song.
Interesting. Okay.
That's something I actually never thought of before until you asked me. So thank you.
How did you ever get into songwriting? How do you go from like a little girl who loves music and is dreaming of being where you are now to actually doing it?
I was doing it as a little girl. I never thought to myself, I want to be a songwriter. It was never a choice. I was just doing it. I'd hear music, I'd think of words. My mommy yelled at me, I'd sit by the piano and write a song. I heard songs, I loved them. I thought, I don't think I thought this intellectually, but emotionally I must have felt this is the way I will go forth expressing myself. I was doing it when I was little. Then I went to college for something completely different. Came out of college, went to New York to the garment district to study, to work in the fashion industry. Didn't really like the culture. Remember that I never stopped writing songs. I would escape to a little piano cubicle in the music building every day after classes. But this was before the internet. I never met a songwriter before college. I never knew people. I thought everybody that was singing songs on the radio wrote their songs. I never knew you could be a songwriter. And so...
Okay, so when was the break? How do you break in from going...
After college, I went to New York. I didn't like the culture, and I became a waitress. And I was always, looking at the want ads in newspapers, and I saw this little ad for a songwriting group that met every week in a bar in Midtown on a Tuesday night. I was like, what?
Oh, that's great.
And I thought, I'm going. Who are these people? They have the same affliction. Are they really people?
Great.
And I went, and a couple of people took my hand and showed me the ropes. They said, you absolutely can write songs for other artists, which was extremely possible back then. It's not as possible now. It's very self-contained now, and people have their posse. But then it was possible, if you had a remarkable song, to get it to an artist. And they took me downtown, and they introduced me to Bleecker Street, and I started playing in clubs with 20 minutes for free at the Bitter End and Kenny's Castaways. And I thought maybe I'd make my own record and put a band together, which I did. And then I realized if I want to make my own record, I'm going to have to leave my apartment in New York City and go out there and promote and travel. And I was like, I love New York City. And I love my cat, and I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay home. I mean, if somebody said, here's a record deal, make your own record, I would have gone, okay.
So what did you do? You came to LA?
So no, I was in New York from 82 to 94. And I started, writing songs and pitching them to producers I was introduced to that were recording and making records with artists. And one of them liked a song for Taylor Dayne. It was in the mid-'80s.
Which song?
It wasn't a big single. It was this album cut, which I talked about.
Yeah.
Or will talk about. It was called Carry Your Heart. And I wrote it all by myself. And that album went on to sell 3 million records in the United States, which gave me my 9 cents per album.
So was that your first?
My first.
That was the first
That's
one
right.
that went on a record.
That's when physical copies, and you made a certain amount of money for every physical copy. And I thought, I can do this. So I didn't get lucky with every record after that. Not every album I was on sold 3 million records. Some sold 500,000, which is hard to do now because it's digital delivery now. But then it wasn't unusual for a record to sell 500,000 or even 250,000. And if you got on enough of those a year, you could make a living. So I did that for years. And then in 91, I met my now husband, Adam. And he was living in LA, and we long distanced for 3 years. And then in he had moved to Los Angeles from New York, so he wasn't coming back. I had never lived in Los Angeles, and a lot of the songwriting, pop music culture came out to LA or Nashville.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, this is the place to be. And I thought, left to my own devices, I would not leave New York. I loved it. I didn't get enough of it. I was not tired of it, but I thought 3 years with this guy and we're doing really well. And a friend said to me, if you're happy, you take your happiness with you. You're not happy because of where you live. Mm-hmm. And so I came out to Los Angeles, and that's when I was here for a couple of years, and I wrote Bitch and wrote What a Girl Wants, and I think, The Alchemist book, The Alchemist Theory, I sort of followed my muse and believed in myself, which is a big cliche, but it's a very true cliche.
Yeah.
And things started happening and snowballing.
Wow. So nowadays, people would not write music like that or access an artist to be a songwriter that way.
They
Just doesn't happen
can,
like that.
but it's a lot harder. Yeah. And there's a very small percentage of the songwriting community that gets access to those artists, to be in rooms with those artists, because they all want to co-write now, because it's more credible. And some artists should. Some artists are really good writers. Some aren't and shouldn't be, but they do.
Which brings us to you going to Nashville with the latest song, which you talked about, right?
Which I think I'm going to do. And I wrote an incredible song after our discussion the other day. I wrote it a couple of years ago with Beth Nielsen Chapman, who's a pretty renowned artist, especially in Nashville. She wrote This Kiss for Faith Hill, and she's put out music on her own for years. She wrote All My Life. And we got together a few years ago and wrote a song called In This Skin. In This Skin. And it was about getting older and being really cool with it. Yeah. And there's no place I'd rather be.
Oh, I want to hear that.
A couple of months ago, I was reviewing it. We never demoed it. We just wrote it. I had a work tape on a voice memo. And I went home after our conversation the other day, and I texted Beth, and I said, I want to come to Nashville. I want to make a proper demo of that song with you, and then do some research on what more mature women artists, Dolly Parton, Reba, are making records. Between you and I, we can get into those offices. We could say, here's a chick that wrote Bitch and the chick that wrote This Kiss. Yeah. Together we birthed this song. You need to hear it. And I think we could get in, and I think we need somebody to record it. I think we have to stay focused on one or two songs in Notebook that we think these are no-brainers.
Yeah. I love it. And what did she say?
I haven't heard back.
Oh.
But Beth, if you can hear me, she's a busy gal. Yeah. She will get back.
And if she doesn't,
that song has legs.
If she doesn't, you're going to show up at her door, no doubt.
If she doesn't, I'll make her realize how empowering that song is, and how I know we get busy with other things, but how exciting this could be. Yeah. How much fun it will be, and what a story it will make when we get it done.
I love it. Okay, to be continued.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. All right, thank you, Shelly.
My pleasure.
If you'd like to catch Shelly performing around town, buy her book, read her weekly blog, or simply follow her on social media, she can be found at shellypeiken.com. You can also go to the show notes, and I'll have it all spelled out for you there. Until next time, this is 10 Seconds to Air.